So let's start with, we have a viewer, let me back up here a little bit. Our viewers have been with us the last couple of weeks, know that we've covered some big picture kinds of topics, and we're probably going to have an opportunity to do that again tonight. But we have now some questions from our viewers who want to move into some more detail. We have viewers very concerned about K-12 education, financing of K-12 education, and what's likely to come out of this session. Of course, it's a budget year, and so these are topics that are certainly prime for discussion. Representative Nornes, you sort of tipped us off there a little bit that you might have had a little background in that. Why don't we start with you, talk about K-12, and then we'll go around the table. And I probably should say it's more than K-12. It's now pre-K to 12.
It is. And it is a very important part of what we do here. It's the one area where we're required to fund education. So, and it's also a big part of the budget. I can honestly say at this stage in this session, we're still going through backgrounds. There are a lot of new members on the committee, so it's kind of setting the stage for what's there, what we do, how it's done. So we haven't gotten into any bills or any real deep discussions on, except for, a hint that when it comes to funding, it's going to be the same old story. You're going to be competing with many others, Health and Human Services, just one of those. And we're not sure what that looks like, because when you look at the entire budget situation, it's not going to go very far as it sits. Although it sounds like we got a lot of money, but what the experts tell me, it's you don't want to go crazy and start spending it, is what I'm saying. So with K-12, one of the things is safety. That's what I'm hearing early again, that kind of get left, some of it left on the on the veto board last time. So the schools are desperately needing more help in that area. We had $25 million in the last session for that purpose. And I was told today that when that passed, I think the applications were well in excess of 100 million. And it happened within just a matter of days. So the need out there is very large. And so we need to, again, revisit that.
Representative Moran, your thoughts on education, K-12, pre-K-12?
It's pre-K, yes, absolutely. And so this is important to me. My degree is in early childhood education. It's a field that I worked in for like 15 years, whether it's private, public, Head Start, respite. I pretty much have done it while raising my own 7 kids. I'm a mother of 7. And so I've always said on the education committee since my first term, this is the only year that I'm not sitting on education finance policy, because I had to make choices about what committees I wanted to be a part of. But education is hugely important, and there's many, many things that I think we need to do. And so my hope is that, one, that we see education early, which would be the pre-K program. We know from 0 to 5 kids are absorbing, their brains is developing at a rapid rate. And the goal is to make sure that we are helping kids to enter kindergarten ready and prepared, reading by 3rd grade. Because all the facts and the data and evidence tell us that if that is happening, that they will have a better chance of having great educational outcomes, go on to college, right, and thus do better in life. So that is important. But we also know that we need to fully fund education. We need to really make sure that we are putting the funds into the educational system so that we can create better outcomes for kids. And one of the biggest issues urbanly that we need is, surprisingly enough, it's not so much always around the safety part of it, but we know that kids are coming into our school system and they are dealing with homelessness, they are dealing with trauma, they are dealing with many issues. And so our hope is that, we can look at finding ways to include more social workers in the classroom, because teachers are dealing with way too much. We're asking teachers to be the social worker, the case worker, the nurse, and to be the teacher. So we need some support in those classrooms. We need more paraprofessionals in the classroom. We need more nurses in the classroom. So there's a lot that we need to do. And finally, when we talk about education, education does not live in a silo. Educational outcomes is connected to looking at housing, making sure kids families are stable. So there is an initiative going around called Homework Starts at Home, which is like a statewide initiative. But what we do know is that we have a large homeless population, right? And it'd be nice to have a home where you are stable, but often enough we know that kids are and their families are living in cars, they're couch hopping, and they're not always able to do their homework, right? Because maybe they're just riding on a light rail all night long, right? To get up and go into a gas station, to wash up, to drop their kids off at school so they can go to work. Those things are real issues that are happening. So I would like to see this session that we're looking at solution through a more comprehensive lens, recognizing that education is not a silo issue, that it impacts workforce, it impacts housing, and it also impacts learning, and that we got to do better.
Senator?
First of all, I agree with a lot of things both of them said. I think when we look at the budget, when people say we got $1 billion+ surplus, that's a little bit misleading because when we factor in the budget is by law required the administration calculates how much revenue we're getting, inflation adjusted, and that's what they're really expecting to get in. And then the expenditure side, we don't factor in inflation. And some of these things are automatically going to grow because if there are more kids in school, other things, we don't factor in any inflation to address some of those issues. And so I think that in the end, by the time, if you inflation adjusted things, you would have very much of no surplus whatsoever. But I think one of the things in the schools that I'm hearing from across the state is special education, where both the federal government, which mandates it, and the state, which mandates special education, we say we're going to cover a certain percentage of it. Feds have never done their share, and we haven't done our share either. So the local school districts are saying they have to subsidize from their general revenues, they have to subsidize their special education costs. And I think that would be a big way to move forward in helping fund that, what we've committed to funding. The other thing is, when Rena mentioned looking at the whole child, I had some teachers in the other day who were very concerned about mental health of their kids. And some of that is making sure the schools are prepared to deal with them, but also, I'd argue, that's a case where education outcomes also relate to what we're doing in the healthcare field and how we make sure, because I think human services and their ability to cover mental health is not something we've done a stellar job at. So I think schools have a lot of pressures on. I don't know what's going to happen this year. I think the governor has made a strong commitment to support education, but we'll see what happens.
And we'll get to our last guest on this point, but I wanted to follow up on the special ed question because I noticed that there's been some press coverage about what appears to be sort of a bipartisan committee looking at special ed paperwork kinds of requirements, and maybe there's some relief that could be.
And I think that would help a lot. I mean, I think one of the things that causes burnout among whether it's a lot of professionals, whether it's teachers or doctors or whatever, is the paperwork they have to do. Mm-hmm. And you want to have accountability and make sure that these kids, that they have a good learning program ahead of them and so on. But when the special ed teacher is spending as much time filling out paperwork as spending with the child, you got to say it's overdone. And I think I sense strong bipartisan support to try and look at how we can tone that back, especially in special ed.
I would agree that special ed is an issue, but I would also like us in the school system to look at just how many kids we're sending, tunneling our kids into special ed, right? And they've been diagnosed. And that's a label that follows them throughout their life, right? Definitely throughout the school year. So, we have to look at the paperwork for sure, but we are definitely moving in the direction of funneling too many kids into special ed.
Senator Osmek.
Well, and I have heard the same from special ed teachers in my area, that they're excited, and I am too, that if we could reduce paperwork. And really, the paperwork in many cases is something that is created by us in the legislature that requires these things, or through the Department of Education. The less paperwork, I mean, there's some that's necessary. I'll agree with that. But in the same respect, I think there certainly could be less. And the more you don't spend on administration, the more you can put into the classroom. And then in my area, we have a lot of more collar district or school districts that have to compete with, for example, being Rockford. Rockford School District competes directly with Wayzata, and Wayzata has a lot more resources than Rockford does. So there's some discrepancies in these outer suburbs, or these outside areas before you get to more rural areas that I think needs to be addressed. I don't serve on an education committee, and I definitely don't pretend to be a guru of how education finance works. But I think we have given many increases in education spending, and I'm sure we will do it again. But we have to balance this with the needs of the entire state for many other priorities that we have.
If I can add one thing to that. My wife spent 32 years in special education as a para. And in that time, she often mentioned that the teacher, the person that's in charge, was often only doing paperwork. The teaching was being done by the paras. And that's not all bad. And the other thing that I would tell you that my wife, at least she was able to do, that you get a relationship with these students. It's almost a one-on-one relationship that you don't get in the regular classroom. So in some ways, we've got some good things going. And she, as adults now, some of these students are, I mean, there's one that lives in Florida, calls her every year on her birthday. I mean, so this is really, makes your heart warm when you see how these have grown up. Many of them have jobs, some have gotten married, and that's the end result you want. But again, we don't want to burden the people that have in the position to probably teach and just filling out paperwork.
We probably won't resolve that question this evening, but I will say that I will say that everybody around this table probably has a story to tell about some teacher that made a difference in their lives, and so I think we're all very conscious of that.